What's up, Moto fans? Michael here at Moto Machines, and today we are going to be doing an overview / installation of the Rapid Bike Evo module. Now, if you don't know what this is, it is basically a piggyback ECU tuning fueling module, much like a Power Commander or maybe another one that I can't think of at the moment. But it basically is going to take the signals from the O2 sensors, the data that those are collecting and sending to the ECU. It's going to intercept them and then take that information and determine what fueling and what air the bike needs to put into the engine to basically get it running in an optimal state, basically. So it essentially tunes itself. It is not an ECU flash. It's very different. There's a lot of connections that have to be made in order for this to work properly. Here's the entire wiring harness that is supplied with the bike. But Rapid Bike does a great thing, and they label absolutely every single plug with what it is. You can see crank sensors here, gear sensors, injector 4. These are all the other injectors. So as you can see, everything's labeled, which is a huge help. And then if you combine that with the little booklet of instructions, which you have to download off the internet, it's a pretty straightforward installation. So as long as you take your time and make sure everything is plugged in properly according to the directions and what everything is saying on the wiring harness, you'll be good to go. Now, Rapid Bike has two different modules. We have the Evo one here, which is the one we're going with. It has that auto tune feature, but it also allows you to hook up a quick shifter. Now, this Daytona that we're putting this on already has a quick shift up, but if you have a newer bike with ride-by-wire throttle, you can add an auto blipper, so quick shift down. Our Daytona does not, so we can't get that, unfortunately. But then there's also the racing module. Now, the main difference between the two is the racing module gives you some extra access to racing tools, such as aftermarket traction control, engine brake management, so you can control how much engine braking your engine gives you, as well as there's one other thing I can't really remember. Oh, launch control, that's it. But since we're not going to be professionally racing these things, we don't really need that racing module, so we opted to go with the Evo, just so we have a tune for the bike. We're gonna move on to installing the unit now. We have to remove the seat first to get access to the battery, as well as the bolts to remove the tank. That does have to come off. Now, I should add that we are installing or adding a aftermarket air filter, more specifically a DNA filter, and it would behoove you to do this at the same time. We'll have a video for the DNA air filter coming out after we do this, but we are adding an air filter, and if you are doing the same, I highly recommend doing the exhaust, the air filter, and the tuning module all at the same time, so you don't have any check engine lights or anything else going on. It's all done at once, and you're good to go. But let's get the seat removed. Just gonna peel this back. I really hate when manufacturers do this. It is rather annoying. Next step is to get the battery disconnected, so we're going to disconnect the negative terminal here. So after disconnecting the battery, the next step is to remove the tank. And then we're going to come down here to the tank pivot and undo that bolt. We're just going to lift up. And you're going to want to be mindful of these connections. We're just going to undo them. Okay, and we're probably going to get a little gas spillage out of this one. All right. So we got the tank removed. We did need an extra set of hands, and by we, I do mean Andrew, the cameraman, and I. You do have to pull a metal bolt out from the tank, but then there's a little sleeve that the bolt sits in that has to come out this way, and it was a little bit fiddly, but we got it out with some needle nose pliers. And then just set it off to the side because we won't be needing it for any time soon. Okay, so right now we're going to plan out routing the wires so we don't have to do it later when everything's connected, because then the plugs are all pulling on each other and it's kind of a hassle. So we're gonna do it ahead of time. Now, we decided that the best place for this to go is right behind the evap canister here under the passenger seat. There's a perfect little cutout here, just big enough for the module. And in order to mount that there, we did have to remove these side tail fairing pieces, as you can see. When I mock this up, it's just really 4 bolts that we had to undo. There's a bolt here, and then there's 2 bolts up here, 1 here in the back as well, and the whole thing you slide down. You basically pull up, push forward, kind of undo the clip at the bottom. It takes some jimmying, but you'll be able to get it. And now that those are out of the way, we can route the cables. And the way that we're going to do this is I'm going to take our harness here, and I'm going to go from the left side next to this evap canister and push this through just so it can hold it there, and then go from there and just slowly work everything down. It's a lot of cables, so I mean, you're not going to get everything lined up perfectly, but just having it here shows that that's the path that we're going to go with it, so it helps us out. All right, so the very first step to installing this is to basically install the injector plugs from the aftermarket wiring harness here, and there's 6 of them on the fuel rails. There's 3 up top and 3 at the bottom. It's important to note that they are numbered from left to right. So it's 1 down here at the bottom left, 2 at the bottom center, 3 bottom right, 4 top left, 5 top middle, 6 top right. And according to the instructions, they want us to start with number 1, so that's what we're gonna start with. It would behoove you to only do 1 at a time. The instructions say to unplug everything, but stuff will get confusing if you do that because nothing OEM is labeled. So I highly recommend just doing them 1 at a time. So we're gonna find the plugs on the Rapid Bike harness that says Injector 1. It has a red and green wire, as you can see there. And we're going to come down here to the bottom left fuel injector plug and undo it. You kind of have to get your fingers in there, and it may be a bit fiddly, but came undone just like that. We're gonna push it up through the top, like so, and then we are going to install Injector 1 plug to replace it. And then it pretty much just pushes on. Just make sure it's the right side up so you don't break anything. If it feels like it's not going on one way, flip it around. The other way you can tell is the rounded part here needs to go on the bottom. Cool. All right, so it does take a little bit of force to get it connected because it's a brand new plug, but once you have it on, it's on. And then we're going to take the fuel injector plug that we unplugged and connect it to the other plug on harness 1. Now, it might have been easier to do this first, but and just like that, fuel injector number 1 is plugged back in. And now I realize that first injector might have been kind of hard to see, but the rest of them are really easy. They're all easy to access. So we're gonna move on to injector 2 now, which is at the bottom center here. So I'm just going to unplug it. Might take some force to remove, but there she is. We're going to locate injector 2, which is here, and plug it in. This time though, I think I'm gonna plug that in first, just because it was giving me a little trouble last time. And then we're gonna take this down here and plug it in. Again, I know it's kind of hard to see, but bam, just like that. Everything's all nice and plugged in. And then injector 3, as you can see, they're all in line, so you just work your way from left to right, and it's all good to go. Oh, there we go. Just to give us a little bit more room. Yeah, they're also extremely hard to plug in because they're new. So just it just takes a little bit of force. You're not gonna break them as long as you're doing them the right direction. All right, and just like that, the 3 bottom injectors are plugged in and set up. We're going to move to the top ones now. All right. So again, they're numbered left to right. So we have 4 here, 5 here, and 6 here. So we're going to locate injector number 4 on the harness. That's 6, that's 5, and that's 4. So this is the one we want. And we're going to undo injector 4. Now I can't get my fingers in on that one. So what I am going to do is just grab a flat blade screwdriver, pry against it slightly to squeeze, and give it a tug up. Okay, injector 4. We're gonna plug it in there, make sure it's in, and then plug it in here. All right, kind of stuff that one down out of the way. Now we're gonna move on to injector 5, which is right here. Again, injector 5. So as you can see, as you get rolling, it's relatively straightforward. Just takes a little work. Last but not least, injector 6 here. Might have to do the same technique with the flat blade, because these are old plugs, so they might be a little stuck. Plug it in and plug it in. All right, just like that, all the injectors are done. Okay, next up, after double checking everything, making sure everything's plugged in on the injector side, because you don't want to have to come back and do this after you put the tank on. So just double check everything's plugged in, everything's snug, and make sure that all of the ones that are plugged into the injectors, say injector 5, for example, right here, this is injector 5. Again, they're counted from left to right. So we have 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5, and 6 up top. Just double check everything, because I promise you, you do not want to have to go back and do all that. So just make sure everything's good to go. But enough on that subject. Next up, we're going to move on to the throttle position sensor, or the TPS, that is found over by injector plug number 3, which is this guy right here. It's connected to the injector 3 wiring harness, and you just have to give it a little pull up from out under the air box here. But we'll get that unplugged now. Just gotta find the plug. There it is. You might need like a flat blade or a pick or something. Again, these plugs are kind of old for when we're doing this, because this bike is a 2015 model. So it just might need a little coercing to come undone. There we go. All right. And then we're going to take the connectors, that's a TPS, that's throttle position sensor, and just plug them in. Okay, just like that. You can hear it click on this, which is nice. We're going to find which way that plugged in, which is, I realize it might be a little hard to see, but there's not much give in these OEM connectors. And just like that, audible click. Again, double check, and then make sure it says TPS on there, and you'll be good to go for that. Okay, so next up, we are moving on to the crankshaft sensor, which is this one right here. Now the instructions say locate and disconnect the 2-pin black connector. This is a clear connector, but the connection itself is black. It's right here. So we're just gonna undo that, and we're gonna make sure that we have our crank sensor plugs isolated there. As you can see, it says crank sensor. So this is a lift up tab. So I'm just gonna take this little flat blade, lift up, and try to get a pull on the crank sensor. There we go. All right, and then we're just gonna plug it into our Rapid Bike one, and then vice versa. And that's it. Next up is the gear position sensor. It's a 3-pin black connector under the tank. And sometimes it says down here on the bottom of the instructions that some models, the gear position sensor has a 4-pin plug, and they supply an adapter for it. Now this is the plug over here on the left side of the bike, and it is indeed a 4-pin. As you can see, there's 4 pins right there. And we will need the provided adapter from Rapid Bike to do this. You're gonna wanna lift up on this connector to remove it. So you just get a pick, lift up, and should come right out. There we go. And then we are going to use the adapter. So it's a 4-pin. So we're gonna have to insert the clear into there, into the bike's harness. It's clicked in. We're gonna take the clear one and then insert that one. And then we're gonna take the white plugs onto the gear sensor portion of the Rapid Bike harness and plug them in. All right, I'll just kind of stuff that one back down there. It's kind of a little bit of a mess, but. Now, after doing the gear position indicator, we're gonna move on to the O2 sensor plug now. Now, the O2 sensor plug, we wanna locate it on the Rapid Bike harness, which is this long offshoot here. As you can see, it says O2 sensor. And we are going to route it down through the bike onto the O2 sensor plug, which there's normally another cover here. We have that removed just because we were too lazy to put it back on. And it plugs into this connector right here. So I'm just gonna route this Rapid Bike harness through the top here. There's this fuel filter here. You can just kind of pull that up out of the way, and then I'm just gonna drop the Rapid Bike harness down through and then come under and give it a tug. Like so. And then I'm gonna put the fuel filter back where it was. Now, this here is a little tight, but you can just pull, and it's a lift up connection, so just lift up on the tab there and give it a pull. Like so. And then connect the Rapid Bike harness. Okay, and because there's a lot of slack here, I'm just gonna give it a pull up through like that. So technically the last step is to attach the Rapid Bike harness to the negative terminal of the battery. But before we do that, we're going to go through all the connections again and just make sure everything's connected in the right spot that it needs to be and all the connections are secure, because again, we don't want to have to take the tank and seat and everything else off just to have to fix something that we've missed. So I'm just going to go through and make sure everything is all snug and good to go. Just follow it along. That's all good. Good. That's in. Okay. Let's get there. Let's get there. And then I know that one's good because I just did it, but I'll check it anyways. Good. Good. Okay, well, other than that, now we have to connect the negative terminal battery, or the ground to the negative terminal. But before we do that too, I'm going to make sure that all of our hoses and stuff for the fuel pump and fuel tank are up and visible, so I don't have to struggle to find them in this wiring nest. And they're all right there. So we're just gonna connect this to the negative terminal now. So as far as installing the module itself, we found that it sits best under here. So we're just gonna kind of move this charcoal canister out of the way and then slide it up here. Give it a press down and then take our wiring and then just kind of like that. She's plugged in. As you can see, not that difficult of an install. The only thing left to do now is just reinstall the fairings and the tank, and you'll be good to go. That's all we got for you guys today. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you're interested in more content like this, hit that notification bell to stay up to date on all the latest Moto Machines madness. Ride safe.